So someone recently asked me to do a video on how to get started with digital art and improve when you're new and basically just where to start. Today I want to give you guys a sort of guideline / roadmap that I think will really help you, especially if you're just getting started with digital art or if you feel like you aren't improving like you want to be. So yeah, let's get to it. So if I were to think of our digital art journey as kind of a roadmap, we would probably imagine it looks something like this, very simple and straightforward, but in reality, it probably looks a little bit more like this. And a big reason for this is because there's really no super simple, easy blueprint for you to follow to just immediately become an amazing artist. We are all kind of in different stages of our art journey, and we all have different styles we want to achieve, and sometimes it's honestly a little overwhelming trying to figure out what specifically we need to do to get there. But if I were starting with digital art today, this is sort of the roadmap that I think I would follow to improve as quickly as possible. To start, let me go over what I would consider the art fundamentals. These are things that are basically laying the foundation for your art skills, and whenever you make decisions while drawing, these are the things that you'll kind of fall back on. I'd say these are things like anatomy, perspective, value and lighting, composition, color theory, and forms. So that is a lot of topics to cover, and that's why I think it's helpful to focus on just a few in the beginning and then add on concepts as you go. So, if you're interested in drawing people and characters, the first two fundamentals that I'd focus on are anatomy and perspective. You don't have to understand color theory or lighting or any of that stuff to create a great drawing. If you were to break down the drawing process to make it as simple as possible, you could literally just have a black and white drawing. So if we're focusing on improving anatomy and perspective, some drawing exercises that I would suggest to work on these things is figure studies, gesture sketches, and drawing from reference. Doing these things will help you kind of train your eye to figure out how things should look. So for example, if you're like studying the face and you're trying to get your proportions right on the face, the more that you pay attention to, oh, the eyes are like about this length and the nose is in line with the ear, or just things like that will help you as you start to learn more anatomy and perspective. I am a big proponent of making studying fun. So if you find like gesture sketches and figure studies boring, I really suggest doing something to make them less awful. So for example, you can see me doing figure studies from a character sheet of Rapunzel. I just found that this was a lot more fun doing it this way versus just normal figure studies. And yeah, it's totally up to you, but you can find a way to have fun while you're learning. And I think you'll actually be much more inclined to actually do these exercises. And I do have some videos on these topics like anatomy and perspective that I will link in the video, and I'll also link it in the description below. But I also recommend just looking at YouTube and looking at other artists. Like there's a ton of great videos out there. So if you can find video and teacher that you really like, I highly recommend looking at that stuff, because I feel like anatomy is really the biggest foundational things for drawing characters. So just, yeah, I think that's a really good one to start with, anatomy and perspective. And then once you feel like you've got a decent handle on anatomy and you're ready to add another fundamental, I would start looking at value, composition, and form. This is definitely a step up, but if you've been doing drawings and you understand your anatomy, these are things that will help you learn how to make a 2D sketch look more 3D. So how do you practice or learn these kind of concepts? For this, I would suggest doing value studies, coloring in grayscale, again, studying from reference and other artists. One thing that I really recommend and that helped me a lot is to do actual studies from artists that you like. So what do I mean by that? I literally mean take a painting that you love from one of your favorite artists that you feel like understands this concept very well and see if you can recreate it or learn from it. I learned so many like little tips and tricks and things that like I would not have even seen just looking at the painting, but because I was recreating it myself, there were so many times where I just picked up on something and I was like, oh, that's how they do that. or oh, this is why they did this. I think that's really good for learning form, composition. You start to train your eye to look for the things that you're seeing in these paintings whenever you're studying and copying them. A big disclaimer here is obviously don't claim another artist's work as your own. But if it's just for you and for your personal learning, I mean, there's nothing wrong with like doing that. Even just like tracing somebody else's sketches and things, like if it helps you, do it. You're not, as long as you're not like trying to take credit for anything or posting it as your own, there's nothing wrong with learning from other artists. Like artists do that all the time. If it's for your own personal work and your eyeballs are the only eyeballs that are gonna see it, it's fine. And now we're kind of coming to the last set of fundamentals to work on. This is where you'll start to focus on color theory and lighting. So because you've now got a good grasp on the other fundamentals at this point, I do think it's a lot less intimidating, but there is a lot to learn. The best way that I found to study these things is to do observational studies from life. And again, follow other artists and see what they do and the way that they use color and light, etc. Find videos of your favorite artist. See if you can find videos of their process and how they approach things. I know that I personally support a lot of artists on Patreon and they share a ton of, really useful information. But you can also, honestly, you can find a lot of information for free online. So just to kind of recap real quick, basically if I were starting out with digital art, so the first things that I would try to work on are the fundamentals. And just to kind of break it up, I would start with anatomy and perspective first. I feel like these are fairly easy to improve quickly, and I also feel like they're really good foundations before you kind of start piling on some more complex things. And once I had a good grasp on anatomy and perspective, then I would start adding in value, composition, and forms. So again, to practice these things, you could do value studies. Studying other artists is a really, really helpful way to learn a lot of these concepts. And then after I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on value and composition, I would move on to color theory and lighting. And honestly, a lot of these will kind of overlap. So like value and lighting, that might kind of overlap as you're learning, and that's okay. Like it's the reason I recommend kind of focusing on one thing at a time or a couple things at a time is just so you don't get overwhelmed. And yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for this video. I really hope you guys found this video helpful. I wish that I had found something like this when I was first starting out because I feel like it would have made it a lot less overwhelming. And I also feel like having this sort of format to try to improve helps you be more intentional with like improving as an artist. I hope that makes sense. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.